based on nutrient uptake, the classification of field crops is finished. Next is based on carbon dioxide fixation. We will be discussing that next. We know that plants synthesizing their own food. Question arises here that how this food is being synthesized in the plant. In the plant is not going anywhere. It is not hunting or it's spraying anything. It's not dependent on anything. Then how the plant are making their own food? Here comes the role of carbon dioxide fixation, CO2 fixation, because plant has to make the glucose food carbohydrate. This is how the carbohydrate is basically made up of carbon. From where this carbon is obtained by the plants, that is from the atmosphere. Plant cannot because cannot move around or hunt organisms for eating, right? Plant do not prey on anything. For that, for the carbon source, plant has to depend on atmosphere. We know that carbon dioxide is present in plenty amount in the atmosphere. Plant can use that carbon dioxide to make this. Now this is known as carbon dioxide fixation. Basically, the conversion of the inorganic compounds, carbon compounds, to the organic compound is known as carbon dioxide fixation, carbon assimilation. Based on this process, how this carbon dioxide is being fixed in the plants, we have this classification. Okay, I hope it is clear to you now. Students, we have already learned this, that in that plants neither own food through the process known as photosynthesis. This is the thing from where process from process through which plant is making their food. Carbon dioxide has huge role played here. Basically, if we talk about chemical reaction, carbon dioxide that is taken up by the plant from the atmosphere get mixed with the water. The water is taken up from the root by the soil with the help of sunlight and chlorophyll. Carbon dioxide, that is carbohydrate is made. Oxygen is released into the atmosphere back. Now from here we can see here that how carbon dioxide is being fixed into the plant and how this food is made, that is carbohydrate, for the plant function. Okay, simultaneously you can see that oxygen is being released back into the atmosphere, that is by the reforestation restoration into the atmosphere. Basically now you have got the understanding that what is carbon dioxide fixation, what is the purpose of this carbon dioxide fixation into the plant. Now before moving to the classification, we have to understand this process of photosynthesis very detailed manner, so that we can have the better idea how this glucose, that is carbohydrate food, food is synthesized by the plant. To understand this process of photosynthesis in a better way, we have discussed each component of that is contributing to this process of photosynthesis in detailed manner. Here we have already discussed that carbon dioxide is taken up by the atmosphere. It is coming from atmosphere. Um, then we have water that roots are taking from the soil. Then we have sunlight. Let let us discuss what is the role of sunlight in this photosynthesis process and how it is helping in the photosynthesis, and as well as role of chlorophyll and in photosynthesis, and how can it help in the process of making carbohydrate to the plants. So let's understand the role of cell light in the photosynthesis process. Sunlight is basically a electromagnetic waves which have different types of, based on the type of wavelength, the rays is divided into different parts. Like for example, wavelength of the 30 is known as radio waves, and 30 to 1 is known as microwaves, and 1 to 10 is 10, it is called infrared or ultraviolet. Then we have beyond that, it's x-rays and gamma rays. That depends on the wavelength of the particular rays. Basically, wavelength is a distance traveled by light from this point to this point. To complete one cycle of this point to this point, that is no one wavelength. This particular is called one wavelength. This is denoted by lambda. Okay. Important part here of the sunlight is that the visible light. Basically, the wavelength of visible light is falls under 700 nanometer to 400 nanometer. Our plant requires observing the wavelength for the purpose of photosynthesis. Now, from the sunlight, this wavelength is being absorbed by the plants, and this is the visible light. Basically, this is known as visible light, as due to this light, objects are visible to us. Okay, this is the wavelength that is important for plant for photosynthesis, and that is why this part of this sunlight, this is visible part of sunlight, is known as photosynthetically active radiation, that is PAR. As a photosynthesis happening in this range, in this wavelength, it is that is why it is known as photosynthetically active radiation, PAR. Okay, basically it is from 400 to 700 nanometer, and this is very important. You should know the range of the PAR, that is a photosynthetically active radiation, and the plant absorbs this radiation for purpose of photosynthesis. Next, move on into the